James Gunn has finally revealed the first image of our new Superman, showcasing David Corenswet fully suited up as the Man of Tomorrow and potentially hinting at the villain of the upcoming film. I'm Brennan Sem for the New Wave Nerds. Like and subscribe below for more nerd content and commentary. Now let's read the news. From Variety, the new Superman suit has officially debuted. As filming on James Gunn's Superman, formerly Superman Legacy, continues, the writer-director shared to his Threads account a first look at star David Corenswet in costume as the Man of Steel. The first thing fans might notice is the suit is quite dirty and weathered, which suggests Superman will be doing plenty of down and dirty fighting in the movie. Gunn added on Threads that the first look photo, quote, was taken on set by Jess Miglio and was entirely in camera, end quote. All right, enough preamble. Without further ado, let us take a look. Let us reveal our new Superman. So here's the first image in all of its glory. I must admit, when this first came across my Instagram feed, it did its job quite well. I was immediately excited for the film. You know, I had a base level of excitement for Superman, previously Superman Legacy, but now it had sort of gone on the back burner, right? We hadn't had much in the way of updates since the Superman logo itself was revealed officially a couple months ago, I want to say. I think it might have even been at the end of 2023. I don't remember if we got it in 24, but since then it's been a little bit in the back burner, and as a result, I had a little bit forgotten about it. But this first look image, the reveal of this has absolutely done its job insofar as the fact that now Superman is at top of mind. I am excited for the film, and it's making me want to revisit some of my favorite comics in preparation for the upcoming film. Something that we'll talk a little bit more about later. But first, I do want to focus a little bit on the image itself. Obviously, the main feature here is David Corenswet's Superman and the reveal of the official Superman suit. So let's zoom in a little bit, take a bit of a closer look. Right at jump, I'm going to say I think I really like the suit. I think it looks good. It is, a bit of a shift away from what we saw with Henry Cavill's Man of Steel suit, which ultimately, as much as I love the Man of Steel suit, I'm not against shifting away from it. I like the sort of more classic color scheme that we're going for here, the bolder blue and red, the less muted chest emblem, the splash of yellow there. I'm not in favor of yellow. I don't like it as a color. It's among my least favorites, and I've been very vocal about that. Typically, as soon as yellow is introduced, I'm instantly against it. It hurts my eyes for whatever reason. But I really like it when it's used in the Superman logo because it's an iconic, logo. It has defined a culture in many ways. So I'm in favor of that. It's weird a little bit to me that his pants are so much brighter than his arm. Like, his arm and chest appear to be really weathered and worn, and his lower body seems to be pretty pristine. It seems to be pretty pristine. But I don't know. That was just a little bit weird to me. I like the sort of the texture of the suit here. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit more. I don't know how well this is going to go. I like that the sort of, crosshatch puckling or whatever. I don't even know what the term would be. And that in conjunction with the sort of inlaid rubber navy, trim, I guess. That's the word I'm looking for. I like that. I like the idea of it. It's obviously going to be a little bit different how it actually looks in motion and in standing and on screen and such, but I think it does look interesting, and I'm not necessarily against it. There are a few things I'm going to point out here. Notably, it doesn't look like it fits very well in the shoulder area, right? It looks like baggy and I don't know, weird. And part of that is probably due in nature just due to the fact of this pose that he's in, right? He's slouched down, putting on his beautiful red boots here. So, it's natural that the fabric would bunch up a little bit, but it just when you look the thing at a whole, it's like the image looks very pristine and clean, and then you see the scrunched up fabric, the scrunched up suit, and it looks a little bit sloppy. It just doesn't mesh with the tone of the rest of the image. It's a little bit weird. But, like I said, part of that is partially due to the pose. And I would like to comment on the pose. It is a weird first look image to reveal, in my opinion. I would think that the first look you would want to show of David Corenswet's Superman would be of him in like maybe the traditional heroic Superman pose, right? Maybe he's got fists at hips or whatever, looking off in the distance slightly at an angle. Classic Superman look. I mean, that is the Superman look. Maybe you don't want to be quite so basic with it, and I respect that to a certain degree. Maybe you want the first look is of him flying up in the air. I don't know. Maybe you go with like an old school stylized poster, a la the Rocketeer. Let me see if I can just pull that one up quick. That would be fun to see with Superman instead. Here, I've got it pulled up here. Something like that, but with Superman. I mean, that would be a fun stylized thing where you can still showcase the suit in a way that is, I don't know, artistic and fun and delightful. I don't know. I mean, I get, wanting to showcase the suit on David Corenswet. I understand. It seems like a bit of a weird choice for posing. One thing that I think would have been fun is, and they could obviously still do this further along down the line, but I think it would be interesting if they like mirror a lot of the promotional material for this movie from Christopher Reeve's Superman the movie from 78. I think that would be fun. And it further solidifies the tone shift from Man of Steel, right? Which, as much as I love Man of Steel, the tone that Zack Snyder took is often a large complaint that I hear from most people, is that it doesn't necessarily feel like Superman because it's much more dark and grounded. And ultimately, at the end, spoiler alert for a decade-old movie, he takes ultimate action against Zod and shuffles him loose this mortal coil. And so I think, the difference in marketing and hearkening back to the Boy Scout of Christopher Reeve might solidify that tone shift might solidify the difference and make it a little more obvious and further ingrain to the casual viewer that, look, this is Superman, but it's different from the last Superman we saw. So I think there's certainly that's something that I thought would have been fun. But that being said, there are a lot of people who are like dogging on the image because it's a very weird. It doesn't seem very heroic. It's just Superman casually putting on his boots while there is obviously danger and destruction going on in Metropolis in the background. Like, it doesn't necessarily paint him in a very heroic light. So, I have that as well. If this were just a promotional image, I would be fine with it. As the first look, it does feel like it sets a weird tone for this kind of Superman. So there is that there. But since I mentioned it, I would like to focus in a little bit more heavily on this, whatever's going on in the background here. Let's see, I guess I'll zoom in just a teensy bit more. So in the background of this image, Superman's in his pristine Metropolis loft, and through the beautiful large windows behind him, we see the Metropolis city skyline looking its beautiful, majestic self. And then hovering some ways above that is a big ball of energy. I don't know. It's obviously not, it's pretty ambiguous what this exactly is, but naturally the internet is abuzz with ideas, some of which I find supremely interesting. Where should I start? All right, so I'm going to start with the slightly less outlandish prediction that I've heard from some. The slightly less and outlandish and therefore more obvious choice. There are many who believe that this object, this enemy, this weapon, I guess, is the work of none other than iconic Superman villain of Brainiac himself. Oh, that's the wrong one. There's Brainiac. My bad. So obviously Brainiac, like I said, one of the most iconic Superman villains. He's recurred in probably as many stories as any other villain. He's at least, I wouldn't say at least, but he's arguably as prolific as, say, like a Lex Luthor or as a Doomsday, right? This is an iconic villain. Even though he hasn't been seen in live action, I think even the name of Brainiac is it's still fairly niche, but it definitely is a little bit more mainstream than some of Superman's other foes. Clearly, it's not as mainstream as, say, Lex Luthor, right? Everybody knows Lex Luthor, even if you're not familiar with Superman. Brainiac is definitely a little bit more niche than that, but he's not as niche as, say, Mr. Mixoplitix, or I can never pronounce his name, but that guy, or some of the what's his name? It's not like Morph. I don't remember. Not important. I think Morph is the X-Men character, but it's a similar idea. That's another villain that is definitely a little bit more niche. Or I could just start naming Superman villains, but Brainiac is definitely one of the more mainstream. And it's because of that it is a little bit weird that his appearances in live action are extremely limited. As far as I'm aware, the only live action appearance of him is in the TV show Smallville. Apart from that, he's been largely relegated to animated TV series, Superman the Animated Series, as well as, or animated Superman projects, as well as like broader DC Universe animated things like Justice League and I believe Justice League Unlimited, I think, is the one where... not important. But largely relegated to video games, animation, and the comics and the like. And so I think it's really interesting to me. He is a character who I would absolutely like to see make a debut in live action, and I think this DCU does make sense. Or I don't know if it necessarily makes sense, but I think it sort of fits into the broader plan for, or presumably fits into the broader plan for the DC universe moving forward, right? I mean, when this new slate was announced back in, would that have been the end of 2022? Or maybe it was 2023, but when they initially announced the slate, I think it was 22, the slate of the new DCU properties, this opening phase, if you will, borrowing the language of Marvel, this opening chapter was known as Gods and Monsters, right? I think Brainiac can easily sort of fit into that mold. I think an argument could be made that he is tantamount to a god, right? He lowercase g god, of course. I think there's certainly a way to do a storyline like that, or to make that fit into the broader theme. That obviously, I mean, you can shoehorn that into any story, and the other potential makes sense as well, which we'll get into in a little bit here. I don't know if Brainiac is personally my top choice for villain for this, but I would certainly like to see him show up in the DCU at some point. It doesn't necessarily have to be Superman. I mean, it should be a Superman film, but I don't know if it should necessarily be the 2025 Superman one. I think that would be interesting because, again, we haven't seen Brainiac in live action. It makes sense to me at a certain level to have the opening salvo of this new era of DC Studios be this character that we've never seen before. Although now that I'm thinking about it, seeing Giancarlo Esposito play Brainiac would be freaking awesome. That would be really cool. Man, Oh, I didn't think about that. I hadn't even thought about any potential castings or anything, right? Moving forward. I just thought of the idea as the character as a whole. Giancarlo Esposito would be fun to see. I don't know what the intricacies of like his deal with Marvel is now. They might have like a certain exclusivity clause, presumably not permanent, but maybe through a range of time. I don't know how it works, but I would presume that since he's recently announced that he will be joining the MCU, go watch our video on that, released this Monday, I believe. Should be up and live now. Go give that a watch for our thoughts there and see who he's going to be playing. He would be fun. He would definitely be fun to play Brainiac. But obviously, we're gonna, the major news in reference to this film was obviously the announcement of Nicholas Hoult, his official casting as Lex Luthor, right? So we know that Lex Luthor will obviously be playing a role in this film. And I think along with that, we all had sort of assumed that he would be the main antagonist. There's a potential there, obviously. I would certainly be in favor of that. Lex Luthor is absolutely one of my favorite villains of all time. But I do think there's a way that James Gunn could take this, with a bait and switch, I suppose, if you will, where he dangles Lex Luthor, announcing his casting early on, making us believe that he will be the main antagonist, to rather relegate him to being a supporting character, right? Which leads me to the second prediction I have seen on the interwebs here. So let's just, again, transfer back over to this first look image of David Corenswet to take a look at this big glowing thing again. So the first prediction would assume that this is some form of spacecraft operated by Brainiac, right? But this second prediction takes it a little bit in a different direction. And this is one that is very obscure. So like I mentioned earlier, Brainiac is definitely, among the more iconic villains of Superman. This next one is certainly more niche. And this villain is Solaris, right? So Solaris, despite the fact that he is well-known among the Superman community, is a niche villain insofar as his appearances have actually been fairly limited in the comics. So this villain Solaris was created by Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison. In fact, I believe this comic frame is taken from All-Star Superman, written by Grant Morrison, which I actually have right here. One of my favorite comics, absolutely worth the reading. It's one of my favorite comics of all time. I would argue it's one of the greatest comics ever written. I would certainly argue it is, if not the one of the greatest Superman comics ever written. It's certainly up there. I would say one of my personal favorites, definitely one of the greatest Superman comics, and maybe one of the greatest comics, period. So definitely worth picking up. It's just an iconic run. It is essential to the Superman mythos as far as I am concerned, and I think that is not exactly a controversial opinion. But as for this villain, so as I said, his name is Solaris. As far as I understand, I have not read his origin story, but like I said, he makes an appearance in All-Star Superman, so I do know somewhat, and I've done some preliminary research. As far as I can tell, Solaris is a super advanced AI computer system. And there's a whole convoluted story where I believe he gets constructed in modern day, but then he becomes a villain in like the 843rd century or something. And then there's a whole other thing where they go back. It's all time travel, wibbly wobbly stuff. So the important thing to know here is that Solaris operates as an artificial sun. I believe in the comic, in the 843rd or 53rd century or whatever, his purpose, his telos, is to act as an artificial star warming up the outer planets of the solar system. In this hypothetical future, man has expanded out and colonized, I believe, out to Pluto even, at least out to No, I don't know about Neptune. I don't even know how they write that away because it's a water planet, but not important. Or is it? I don't know. I'm not a astronomer, astrophysicist. That's not what we're here to talk about. But this villain ultimately makes his a return in All-Star Superman through a partnership with Lex Luthor, right? So this is one way where I think there's a potential that this villain could make an appearance, or that some people think this villain could make a potential appearance in the upcoming Superman film, while still having Lex Luthor be a villain and play a large part. It is through the cooperation. It is through these two working together, which again is the baseline, is the basis for Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman. A comic that we know is one of the inspirations that James Gunn himself has said. It's one that he posted, saying that he was reading it for source material. We know that he is a big fan of Grant Morrison's writing in his comics in general. I think Grant Morrison is the author of The Authority, which is another one of the upcoming DCU properties. So there's a potential for that there. Obviously, on a visual perspective, just based on the fact that they are massive spherical objects, it's hard to deny the comparison there. I don't know if there's any other actual evidence, I guess, that this is this. I mean, there's no evidence either way, right? Because presumably purple is a color that is long associated with Brainiac, and so, there's some purple there. So potentially, there's a little bit of some evidence that it could be Brainiac, and maybe this is green. I don't know. I mean, it's all conjecture, right? All of it is guesswork. I think it's much more likely that this is Brainiac than that it's Solaris. But I think it actually could be a pretty interesting storyline. But I brought up The Authority, and so now I'm going to transition to some other aspects of the potential story of this film. So we know, based off of, back in, I want to say, July of last year, James Gunn had posted a picture from an iconic Superman story saying that the caption was something like he was doing research. And it is an image from another one of the most iconic comics, Superman comics, one of my favorites ever. It is one that we've talked about a lot, one that I actually have, again, in my hands, but I actually have it autographed by the author himself, and that is DC's Kingdom Come. Like I said, another incredible story. This one, it's a little bit weird. It's an Elseworlds tale, arguably the greatest Elseworlds tale, although maybe Superman Red Sun is up there as well. But this one follows an elderly Superman, or not elderly, an aged Superman who returns to Earth after taking a bit of a self-imposed exile, right? And the story is that the older generation of superheroes, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the older generation, they've kind of aged out, and so they've taken a bit of a back seat, and the younger generation comes up and they are a little bit more destructive. They have a little bit looser morals. They don't have the strict code and honor and integrity that someone like Superman does. And so they wreak havoc. I'm not going too in depth in the story here because it's another one that I think you should absolutely read. Maybe we'll do a full review and analysis here sometime. But right now, the short and skinny of the story is that there's consternation and trouble from the younger generation, and so the older generation has to, come back and whoop some behind and get the youngins in line and save the world, essentially. And it ends with this massive superhero civil war of epic biblical proportions, and it's absolutely incredible. The art from Alex Ross is some of the most beautiful I've ever seen, and I don't traditionally comment on art. I don't have much of an eye for it, but it's obviously Alex Ross is amazing. Having a full limited series with Alex Ross's art style, it's a joy for the eyes. But the way that relates and could be a potential storyline for this film is that many on the internet believe that this story is shaping up to be a bit of a reverse Kingdom Come, that they're going to flip the script on its head a little bit, as it were. Geez, that was a bit of a difficult sentence. So the idea behind this is that originally this film was what's the word I'm looking for? Announced, was marketed as a younger Superman. They said it wasn't an origin story, but it was going to follow a younger Superman. And then since then, James Gunn has come out and clarified that it is not an origin story. It is not a young Superman, like, early 20s or whatever, but it is, it does follow a different period in his life than we're used to seeing, especially with the first film of the trilogy. So what many believe, and it's also been confirmed by James Gunn, obviously, for a long time now, that other than David Corenswet's Superman, other superheroes will also, in fact, be appearing, though their roles will be relatively minor, right? But we have Nathan Fillion is playing Guy Gardner's Green Lantern. We have, I believe, Isabella Merced is playing Hawkgirl. We've got Mr. Terrific. There's a whole smorgasbord of Justice Society folks or whatever. And so I think many people believe that it's going to be a reverse Kingdom Come storyline, in the sense that it's going to be a world where there are already superheroes here. There's this group, and they are the ones who are getting a little fast and loose with the morals, or maybe they're slacking a little bit, and it is a younger, more idealized Superman who swoops in to save the day and reinvigorate and bring a new level of hope to the group and to the state of the world or whatever. So there's I think that would be an interesting idea. I don't know if I necessarily love it. I think it's good because it plays on some of the most important aspects of the character of Superman, right? Is that he is the symbol of hope. He is, I mean, people say it mockingly, but he is like the Boy Scout, right? He is the ultimate paragon of virtue, right? He is the greatest person there ever was. He is the best of what makes us human and the best of what makes him Kryptonian, right? He is the Superman. And so I think it's good, hopefully, that we're presumably, I like the idea in so far as it returns to that, as to what makes Superman Superman. I don't know if a story like that is entirely likely, because it sounds a bit like an origin story, right? It does sort of sound like an origin story. I don't know how they square those two ideas and bring them together, a way of introducing Superman into the superhero fold in a way that reinvigorates the morals and hopes of the quote-unquote Justice Society, while having it not be an origin story for Superman. I don't know how you bring him into the fold while saying that he was already in the fold. So that's one way in which that storyline doesn't seem likely. But I still would like to see it. And the Kingdom Come, like the proper Kingdom Come storyline, is one that I would absolutely love to see adapted at some point. And if you're going to do it, I don't think you do it, in this world. I would think that the ultimate way, the smartest way to make a movie like that, is to have David Corenswet do his run as, the DCU Superman. And then after, he's done his series of films, however many he does, I don't know if he does a trilogy, if he does a couple, whatever. Once it's time to retire that character, then we do an Elseworlds storyline where he still plays Superman, and the actor himself is aged up a little bit more. He understands the character. He can be a little bit, he knows where he comes from and stuff like that. He's attached to this character, and so the emotional underpinnings and sort of the mind state of Superman will actually be able to come through then, because David Corenswet himself will understand the character. I think that's the way that I would prefer to see it done, is in an Elseworlds movie. Elseworlds like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker or Robert Pattinson's The Batman, right? These are what have been classified by DC Studios as Elseworld films, and so it's a method and I guess, I don't know, a method. For some reason I was thinking of another word, but I couldn't. I lost it. A method that they're open to doing, and so I think doing fun stories like that is the proper way to do it. I don't know about this film. I'm excited for it personally. I think there's really a chance that it could be really good. Either way, I'm gonna go see it. Superman is one of my favorite superheroes, and so anytime there is any film, even if I know it's going to be bad, I will go see that in the theaters. I just love the character so much, and there's only a few characters that a few heroes for which I would go through that level of pain ultimately, but Superman is definitely one of them. So I'm excited for it. There are a few things that give me pause. The introduction of all of these superheroes together. It's certainly, there's a potentiality that the film just tries to introduce too much in one go. There's a chance that it succumbs sort of to the same problem that I levied against Rebel Moon, right? Is that it tried to introduce the entire universe from the ground level and build all of it up at the exact same time. That's a little bit of a worry that I have in relation to this film too. I feel like it's really easy to fall into that trap. But like I said, all in all, I think I'm really excited for it. This image fills me with, I don't know if it fills me with hope per se, but it looks good. Honestly, it looks like Superman, and so that definitely bodes well for me. Let me know down below, what do you guys think? Are you excited for this film? What do you think of the suit? What do you think of the logo? And what do you think is going on in the Metropolis? What do you think's happening in Metropolis in the background right now? Where are they going to take this film? What are some potential storylines that you would like to see adapted? Let me know down below. Make sure that you like and subscribe for more content like this. And let's see, tomorrow we're going to have a weekly fixation by none other than Shade Some, available exclusively at youtube.com/newwavenerds. We'll see you guys next week with some more news.